hope I'll be coherent, but it's really early in the morning. The sun just rose. I just watched the sunrise. You'll have noticed that a recurring motif in all the accompanying texts to the Spirit Keeper's Tarot is the concept of the many names and the many faces of the Holy Spirit. There's the biblical concept that man is made in the image of God. It's an allegory attributed to Genesis, but really found in the religious mythology of many cultures, and is this religious concept you'll come across during the initiatory phase of, at least I can say, Orthodox Eastern esoteric traditions. In one creation myth in Chinese folklore, remember, we have many because we are made up of many different ethnic groups, not just one homogenous group called Chinese people. A popular narrative is that we are God, or of a creation God. A primordial deity created us out of himself or herself. So not only are we made in the image and likeness of our primordial god or goddess, depending on the myth in question, but we are made of deity. Deity is within us, part of our soul DNA. Primordial deity in these traditions, by the way, were often associated with a serpent goddess or dragon. Again, the Kundalini motif, if you haven't watched video 9 already. This was a reference to that. In other words, awakening God consciousness within, coming to terms and acknowledgement with that soul DNA that originates from primordial deity, from the name and image of God, in Chinese lore is often associated with a coiled serpent goddess or dragon. Awakening the Kundalini? Are we putting the pieces together yet? So hang in your mind these two thoughts side by side. The Holy Spirit has many names and many faces, and also we are made in the image of the Holy Spirit. Key 14, temperance in the tarot majors in Western mystery traditions, is linked to the higher divine genius. I also believe it is the point at which the holy guardian angel, the personification of that higher divine genius of yours, is revealed. The temperance is the aligning of your personal consciousness with divine higher consciousness, where what is the self-interest becomes aligned and harmonized, tempered with the greater good, a collective interest, and also a divine purpose. Key 14 is also juxtaposed in the tarot majors with Key 15, the Devil card, which in modern psychological terms is often interpreted as bondage to the ego. It's self-interest in a way that becomes a form of self-harm. Crowley reminds us that keys side by side in the major arcana are diplomats and need to be understood relationally. So to understand Key 14, temperance, the higher divine genius, you have to understand Key 15, the devil, and also, of course, the preceding key, Key 13, death, initiation. You see where I'm going with all this, yeah? Part of the great test is to successfully discern between Key 14 and Key 15, between what is the higher divine genius and what is the ego. Presumably, just, I don't know, as a logical question, if that is the great test, then it's got to be hard, right? It's got to be hard to tell the difference between Key 14 and Key 15, right? Okay, so why is it so hard? That's because on the surface, what you perceive with cursory senses, the higher divine genius and the ego look the same. There are many names and many faces of the Holy Spirit. You are made in the image of that Holy Spirit. And so, when you realize your own higher divine genius, what you are going to see, what you are going to initially perceive, is the higher manifestation of yourself. Yet tread carefully, because when you confront the devil, the demon, as I titled it, the demon is the inner demon, the Mara within that will also be a manifestation of yourself. The angel is going to look like you, and the demon is going to look like you too. Figuratively, both angel and demon will bear a strong sense of personal familiarity. In a certain oversimplified sense, God and the devil, in the initiatory rite toward transcendence and realization, necessarily looks like you. You are made in the image of deity. There are many names and many faces to deity. There are many names and many faces to us. You and I bear different names and different faces. My name and likeness for deity will necessarily be different than your name and likeness. So if the descent was from one to many, the ascent will be from many back to one. I thought it was kind of neat to place this video chat on the Holy Guardian Angel in the place of video 15, numerically linked to key 15 in the majors. And for video 14, you and I shared space and time in a remote healing meditation. Healing key 14, I lose myself. All right, so the angel and the demon look the same and both look like you, or some manifestation that you are going to recognize as yourself. How can you tell the difference? First, interrogation. You have to interrogate spirit and by extension, interrogate yourself. Questioning the self, I think is a good place to start. I also don't think you commune with the angel without also immediately confronting the demon and then having to navigate the proverbial tower moment to get to the star. But who you question, who you interrogate, is yourself, not others. That's another point I wanted to make. Okay, let's say I come to you in all sincerity and tell you I've come into knowledge and conversation with my holy guardian angel, and oh, by the way, my holy guardian angel looks like the flying spaghetti monster, and now let me share with you how I came into that knowledge and conversation by eating potatoes.
Lots and lots of mashed potatoes with gravy and stuffing and cranberry sauce.
What your response to that should be is, I think, is support. It's not your place to interrogate me. It's your place to interrogate yourself. However, the hypothetical brings up another valid point, a very important one. Say you do believe that I've come into knowledge and conversation with my holy guardian angel, and you believe I achieved it through eating potatoes.
Mashed potatoes with gravy, stuffing.
I'm sorry for the completely stupid hypothetical. I'm recording this on Thanksgiving Day. Does that explain it for you? I'm also hungry and I really like potatoes. Here's the point I want to make. Maybe I really did achieve a transcendental experience through the eating of copious amounts of Thanksgiving dinner. But I think before you take the plunge and load up on those calories, interrogate yourself, not me, but yourself. Is that a method that's really going to work for you? Whether potatoes is the way for you to achieve knowledge and conversation with your holy guardian angel is something you need to interrogate for yourself. Up to this point, throughout the first septenary and the second septenary, you've got the recurring theme of the binary, the dichotomy of two paths. And one way you can express the two paths is the path of Adam and the path of Eve. You see that metaphor in Key 6, the Lovers card, in both the Rider-Waite-Smith and the Thoth Tarot. It's there to reveal a core esoteric tenet, the way of the two paths, and one can be likened to the path of Adam and the other to the path of Eve. Both lead to spirit, but Adam will walk a different path from Eve, and you do need to get a little bit out of the mundane Sunday school conception of Adam and Eve here. It's also not gendered, not in the physiological sense we humans are so used to thinking about gender. Also, the divine two is the divine three. Two is three, the Holy Trinity born from the binary. And if we're moving over to esoteric Taoist vocabulary, the binary of yin and yang beget the Holy Trinity of heaven, earth, and man in an astral sense, not physical. And two is three. So what I'm trying to get at is there aren't two paths, but three. It's not just the path of Adam and the path of Eve. There's also the path of Lilith. When you examine esoteric tarot decks closely, you are going to find that recurring motif of the binary paths to God, the two paths, the Holy Trinity, and the spiritual equation where two is three. The Holy One is the binary two, which is the Holy Trinity, which materialized through the elementals and so on, into the spiritual calculus of the infinity, of the all. Part of the personal religious journey is, at least as it was for me, was first to acknowledge the many names and many faces of the Holy Spirit, that many are sourced from three that are the two that all return to one. And then knowledge and conversation of your holy guardian angel is, in another manner of speaking, coming into identification with the one name and one face of the Holy Spirit that reflects back your personal connection into that Holy Spirit, how you, a single consciousness, dial in to the infinity, the collective consciousness. The name I come to know and the face I see of divinity, and also even of the inner demon, is different from what you'll come to know for yourself. I'll see a different name and face from the name and face you see, and I think part of the wisdom to acquire is to truly, fully understand and embrace that both faces are the same and both names are the same name. And once more for reiteration, there are many paths up that mountain. The many can be expressed by that binary, which in Western mystic traditions can be likened to the path of Adam and the path of Eve, with the silent acknowledgement of a third, the path of Lilith. Part of the demon is going to compel you to argue with others, meaning instead of interrogating yourself, you assume you're right and instead interrogate others. You stand as the accuser, in a manner of speaking. Bible joke? Sorry. But you stand as the accuser rather than the accused, and you become compelled to argue that others are wrong and you're the one who is right. Interestingly enough, when you start talking openly about ritual magic, you enter this arena where folks really like to compare who has the bigger dick, or put less crassly, who is the strongest, biggest, baddest, who is the most powerful, most knowledgeable, who knows better than everyone else about God and the devil. And I think when you give in to the temptation to compete in that arena, to contend that you're the biggest, baddest, strongest, most powerful, most knowledgeable, I think that's a good time to stop and interrogate yourself, to parse that fine line between the angel and the demon within. That also means at no point should you construe anything I've said in the Book of Maps or in any of these videos as the way. There isn't the way. There's my way that I'm giving as testimony as having worked for me. That's it, nothing more. I'm sharing with you my way. I want to share with you my way because I hope it'll inspire you to find your way. Get what I'm saying? I may have come away with a name and face of the spirit, but that's not necessarily going to be the name and face of spirit that you see. That's not to say we're seeing two different spirits. Isn't that interesting, by the way? When there are the two in direct comparison in interaction, there will always be the four. Here, it's the probability of four. You're right and I'm wrong and you're right, we're both wrong, or we're both right. And no, sorry, no pithy conclusion of wisdom from that. I just think it's interesting and probably leads to some pithy conclusion of wisdom, but I'm not there yet. I haven't figured it out. I think the difference between who is in knowledge and conversation with the angel and who is with the demon is when the two come in direct comparison. In interaction, the angel arrives when the choice you make is interrogation within. It's the demon manifesting when the choice you make is interrogating others. But don't take that point to the extreme either. In no way am I saying you're forbidden from interrogating the validity of what others are saying. But I think there's a nuance in approach. Are you accusing the other for not speaking the truth, or are you interrogating yourself to decide for yourself whether or not you are able to discern truth from falsehood? See what I'm getting at? I think if I were to try to boil the journey toward knowledge of the angel down to some sort of an attempt at a common denominator, then I'd say it's faith and dedication. There has to be faith and dedication. I don't think anyone is actually saying you scribble with colored pencils into a coloring book or on a set of printed cards while listening to happy New Age music and voila, Kundalini Awakening. And I think if that's what you're thinking, you're kind of missing the point. I think what a faithful, dedicated attempt at ritual coloring does, really any form of ritual that involves the multitasking of your senses, physical, astral, mental, and soul, alongside faithful, dedicated study of divination and religion, is that these practices soon present themselves as a metaphor, and through the metaphor, you see the greater truth. You see what the metaphor applies to. Spirit Keeper's Tarot is very much a personal deck, but I do believe we can glean universal truths from very, very specific personal stories. It's why fiction appeals to us so much. We follow one protagonist's journey, and in that very, very specific narrative arc, we find that kernel of universal truth as it applies to ourselves. And then we can apply that kernel of truth to our own very, very specific narrative arc. For me, and the journey continues, by the way, it's not like I've crossed some sort of finish line and I'm done with the race. Geez, I wish. I hoped for myself when I was drawing these cards is I could write a truthful memoir of my own struggles between the angel and the demon, but in realization of the demon, implement safety measures all along the way to ward off the demon's influence and exercise the best efforts possible to pave a pathway of faith and dedication that can lead the faithful and the dedicated on a guarded journey toward realization of that inner divine genius, to confirm for you the name and the face of the Holy Spirit you will come to know.